Welcome. Today on Founder-Led Sales, I have an interview with Zac Thompson, founder. We have a meeting. Welcome, Zac.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
I'm excited. Well, I know we have a meeting. I'm sure you've heard that pun before.
There we go.
There we go. So tell me about We Have a Meeting. What was the genesis of it? Share that with our founders.
Yeah, so I was a career salesperson for about a decade. I was typically in hunter positions, probably back when you didn't have big, cool tech stacks. It was very much, here's a laptop, here's a phone, go and get us new business. And I built a skill set around that. So I was typically headhunted from there into hunter-focused job roles.
Would you describe that as like full cycle?
Full cycle, exactly. So everything. So from finding the lead, finding the best way to contact them, the best way to approach them, getting the meeting, sitting the meeting, negotiating, close. I did everything from end to end. And I never had the luxury of data, dialers, any of that stuff. So obviously you build quite a nice, reliable skill set through doing that. And then basically what happened was it was interesting. The pandemic hit and I was working for a business that had basically flipped its offering to become a marketing agency, but just for the purposes of the pandemic. Okay. So they were an events business that used their marketing arm to sell in during the pandemic. So it's unusual, but I was pitching it to people and maybe 4 people said to me in a row in the same week, we don't need marketing. We need someone who does what you do, who's still out there kicking the doors down, getting meetings, winning deals for clients. And I just thought there may be something in this. It just was one of those weird moments where I felt like I can either do it now or maybe I'll never do it. So I started it with, I had 3 children at the time. We were just talking about children off air. I had a month's salary, a mortgage to pay, and my 4th child was about 3 months away from being born when I started. But I thought, what's the worst that could happen? So I basically started ringing around, offering myself as the service, saying, I will kick the doors down for you. I will get the meetings for your business. And the 9th call that I made, a guy said, if you can genuinely do that for me, I'll pay you right now. So that is the short origin story of end to end, how it all began.
I like it. And so how did it progress? From my understanding now, you have over 20 folks prospecting. Talk about that evolution.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting, right? So the first progression was in what do I call the business? And as I was saying, you don't have the luxury of the dialer, the data, getting hold of people on the mobile. So I knew I would have to get hold of people through gatekeepers. And I thought, what can I call the business that will get me through gatekeepers every time? So I called the business, We Have a Meeting. Yeah. So that when I would get through, so Seth, I might ring your PA. She says, hello. I say, I need to speak to Seth. Yeah, what's the call regarding? Oh, let me know we have a meeting. I get put through. You're maybe a bit annoyed. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. No. The business name is We Have a Meeting. And then people would laugh and say, that's very cheeky. I like what you've done there.
You're cheeky. All right, now we're here. Yeah, like
so now we're here.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then we're into the call, which we can talk about the methodology and things. So that worked really well. I basically thought if I could give myself my salary to start off with, that'd be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I was full-time within about a month. So I had 5 clients, one every day of the week. So one for every day of the week, I had 5 clients. And I was thinking, can I scale this up? And at the same time, my best friend, Jack, who is one of the directors of the business, he was in a sales job that he really hated. And he was seeing what I was doing. We were talking all the time. And he said, and I said, well, look, why don't you come on board for a month and just see what it feels like? And he came on board. He was also full in about a month. So like, wow, maybe there's something in this. And
do you mind if I ask what you were charging in the early days?
Yeah. So,
or the model that you were using?
The model initially was stupid. It was a model based on a hippie idea, but the model at the start was, you'll pay me half up front, and then you'll pay me half at the end if you're happy with the results that you've had. Now, if you're a commercially minded business owner, happy is a subjective term.
I was going to say, that sounds like some loose success criteria. All right.
So people would go, I'm really happy with the meetings, but
I expected 1,000 and you only got me 100, and you're like, 100's more than anyone's ever gotten. But
and there's one here that I think we're going to close. If we close that, I'll pay you the other. It was all got bizarre. So anyway, but at the very start, what we were charging was £250 a day, which, spoiler alert, I don't charge that anymore. charged
Okay.
lots more than that, but £250 a day at the start.
Well, hey, it got you here, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. So, how did the business evolve after you guys hit your capacity limit, which is the challenge with any agency of someone taking their expertise like yourself and trading it for time?
So we were really, really fortunate. And sometimes you think that is just pure luck that happened. I'd love to say there was some skill that happened to it, but we basically had a client that had recently had big venture capital injection.
Okay.
They're a tech company, and we really hit it out of the park immediately. Like, they were getting great meetings. It was working, doing things their internal team couldn't do. But it was just us, just me and Jack in the business at the time. And the CEO of the business rang up saying, I'm so impressed. Can we add more people to this campaign?
More Zacs and Jacks. Let's do this.
There's no more people. What do we do? So we basically structured a deal with him where the recruitment services to build and train the team were included in that. So we got a long-term deal with them and basically charged them for the recruitment and training, the training obviously that we would give them, but just for the time, for 5 people to hire. And what we actually opted for was hiring 5 people with no experience.
Okay. So what does that mean?
Oh, I'd, in my career, and maybe you've experienced this as well, worked with people who've got maybe 10 years sales experience, but what they really have is the same year 10 times. So they've just kind of worked in a job for a year, jumped to another job for a year. It's not really a marker of success or methodology or I really know what I'm doing. Or
they worked one place 10 years and they did the same thing.
And there's that as well. That's the risk in a business like ours. Yeah, exactly. So we hired 5 graduates, no experience. This was in Manchester, first and foremost. I just had my baby around that time. I didn't want to just abandon the house immediately. We trained those guys up using the WAM methodology, which I can talk about what that is. But it was changed somewhat since we started. It was quite rough and ready, and it was very much a crash course on what we do, and I'll kind of teach you on the job. So a bit about how to open the call, a bit about the questions to ask, and a bit about how to close the conversations. And what we were seeing initially was you'd have this great volume of meeting booked rate, but the attendance might not be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was almost like an exercise in volume first, and then more and more quality. And so you kind of had this refined puzzle piece that went forward. It's a lot better now in terms of what we do. And I want to
talk about it now, but I have two kind of things that come up now. I think for founders listening, they should be very careful about making that same hire of someone who's just with no experience, because you have the wisdom, you have the experience, you are going to train them, right? For a founder who doesn't have your 10 years of sales experience and wisdom and kind of expertise, that's a dangerous game, right? Because what would you train them, right? Like, I think that's really risky. And so I'm imagining you would agree. You can disagree.
I agree. I also think probably people, if you're hiring salespeople, people tend to hire on funny, unusual things as well. I'd be much more interested in hiring someone based on habits. Okay, are you someone who can build repeatable, predictable habits over time?
So that's my question: is what were the second question was, what were the qualities of those 5 folks, and maybe that you've stuck with if you continue hiring people without experience? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so there's a thing around habits is an important one. Are you someone who can stick to habits and keep them and be predictable? I don't want kind of unpredictable.
That?
Well, you're basically looking for how they approach things in their own life. So a common thing at the minute is if you're someone who's part of maybe TikTok culture, you might be someone who watches a video on a get-rich-quick scheme, tries it out, and then doesn't work. I try the next thing, doesn't work, try the next thing. So you've then built a habit. It's not necessarily a good, reliable habit, but it's a habit of when things don't work, I quit.
Okay.
So then, right, that's something that we explore for. The other thing is habits around emotional resilience or kind of baseline.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for what is the habit when you're pushed. So normally me and my director play a somewhat good cop, bad cop game. And what are the habits that you revert back to? And then we might repeat that conversation somewhere else in the interview process.
Okay.
And see, is that something that you push back on again? So what is the habit that you build around having difficult conversations? And then also we do some role plays that are based on kind of real life scenarios. So an example that I give that sometimes gets people's back up is I do a role play of we're at the pub, at the bar, having a drink, you're my friend, and I'm worried that my wife's going to leave me. That's the role play. And what I'm looking for is the habits around what kind of questions do you ask? Are you a curious person? How long does it take you to start pitching me the ideal solution of how to fix my marriage? So I'm looking at all these different routes of just what is part of your makeup as a person outside of sales. Anyone can do a sales interview. I'm interested in the guy that shows up on the first day.
Well, and I love the role play of non-sales stuff, right? Like the whole role play of sell me our product falls apart because you don't know my product. Like, how are you going to be able to run a good discovery? Or sell me your product that you've been selling, but like, I'm not actually a buyer, so I don't even know the right questions. You're going to dance all around me. Like,
exactly.
So this is a great one. It's like we've all been in a pub or a public situation with a friend or talked to a friend about a tough situation. What do you do there? That's incredible. So I'd love to learn about the progress that you've made in scaling up that team. Let's peel back another layer. How do you train up these folks that it sounds like you like the raw talent? How do you get them to be successful in your business?
Can I talk about how we train them now? Because how we trained them before probably.
Yeah. No, useful. Like what you've learned, I guess is
yeah. So there's a few things that we do now that have worked really, really well. So one thing that we do is we have recruitment events. So we bring lots and lots of recruitment. We bring lots and lots of talent into a recruitment event. It would be similar to the call that we're having.
Okay.
There's maybe 20 people in there.
Great.
And what I do on that call is I teach a skill, and then we role play that skill. But it's a skill that would exist probably outside of sales. So it could be, how do I get information out of someone without asking a question? So that might be a skill that I teach someone. And I'll teach someone that skill, and then we role play it. And what I'm looking for is who in the room and who in the room is comfortable role playing in front of a room full of strangers. So that's kind of the first step.
But these are people you've already hired.
No, these are people that are just part of the interview process. So what's in it for them? They learn something. If they're unsuccessful, they're like, okay, well, I learned something. That's a reason to attend an event like this. If they're successful, they then move into the next part of the process. And the last part of the process is the team meet them without me.
Sorry to interrupt. I love this. So you're getting into some like pretty sophisticated psychological training exercises. Do you have a background in that? Do you study that? Are you passionate about that? Like all three? Like how did you... Like I've never heard of this, and I've seen quite a bit because I'm old.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, look,
how did you get to this place?
I basically, through my sales career, learned that, and you touched on it then, Seth, about role plays that exist outside of sales are more reliable. Things that exist in real world settings that you can bring into sales are really impactful. So what I found was bringing in therapy techniques and psychology techniques into selling is much better than picking up some old crap sales book from the 90s.
Yeah, I love it. No, so I agree with that, and it's clear that it's working for you. So how do you apply that? Are you studying this and then taking those?
Yeah, I
things
basically just picked
them?
up. Exactly. So I would find something like a technique or a style. So at the minute I'm looking into something called transformative questioning, which is like a therapy technique that I'm trying to get my head around.
Okay.
And I basically learn it from the ground up, and then I apply it where I think it would work. We see if it works. If it works, it becomes part of the methodology. If it doesn't, I throw it out. We don't look at it again.
And you have a career in therapy as a therapist after.
Perhaps, Seth, if you'd like me.
Well, and it's funny. I think most good sales leaders and leaders in general are basically kind of unqualified therapists. Like they didn't go to school for it, but it's like you're managing 20 salespeople. There's a lot of egos. Like you're helping navigate, the best folks. It's usually not motivating them. It's getting the clutter in their heads out of the way so they can focus on the job. And like, it's like lay down on the couch, tell me your problems.
Exactly.
let's get that out. Let's hopefully solve some of it and move on. Okay. So you bring them through this. So there's that group therapy, the group training.
So group training. Second interview is with the directors, myself included, and it's probably a bit more of a grilling on, I'm looking for things that are kind of inconsistent in the story. It's probably a bit more of classic interview.
Okay, yeah.
Third stage, should you get through, is there's no directors there. They just meet the team, our team, and they can ask any question. The team never has to tell us what got said. The people that were interviewed never tell us, so they get the real kind of warts and all story of what it's like to work here. Okay. And the team make the final decision if they think, so they put it to a vote.
Really?
The team make the final decision if we hire them. Yeah.
Pure like democracy on the voting.
Pure democracy on the voting. And if anyone's on the fence, then it's usually a no.
Okay. And is it like anonymous voting, or is it like what I've found when I've done interviewing and I did a bit of a democracy at the end, if it was in a group setting, I found that anybody could influence the group. Like I imagine what's happening in juries, this is happening, right? Like
Yeah.
I saw someone influence the group in one way, and then I was like, all right, well, then I just could influence the group in the other way. And then I was like, your vote doesn't count anymore. Like you've been biased. So how do you
Yeah.
avoid that? Is it a,
You write down your vote.
yeah,
So what you think, and then you pass it over, and team leader reads it back to the room. But there's not a
okay,
big
okay.
there's not like a big discussion beforehand, because you're right.
Right.
It can be influenced.
Yes.
So someone who was at I'm kind of at an 8 out of 10 on that person suddenly becomes a 6, and then it's like, oh, maybe it's a no, and then we might. So just that, you write it down, give it to the team leader, they read it out, it's a yes, bang. That's all I
I
need to
love
know.
it.
Let's
I
get
love
them.
it. It's good. You're making things work that I've tried and failed with in the past because of some of these details. Okay, I like it. So then it says thumbs up, you bring them on board
So
and
thumbs up, we bring them in. So what we found is culture is very important with a business like ours and a startup, and especially if you've got a sales environment for your founders that are listening. Culture is really important, and it's one of those things that you kind of want everyone to be involved. The culture is what happens in the room when you're not in it.
okay.
It can't be founder led, the culture, which I know sounds strange, because what happens when you work at home? Like, oh, there's no culture. Really weird. We only turn it on when the boss is here. So what I found was I can get everyone involved in the training, everyone in the team. So
Okay.
I think you're the best at this style of questioning. You're going to teach that. I think you're the best at openers. I think you're the best at closing. I think you're the best at objections. And I give everyone in the team their own task to teach. And then the person that starts, or the people, typically we hire in packs, they go through a training program that is 1 week, then a week on the phones, and then a more advanced week of training.
Okay.
And then after that, they book meetings for me. So they're ringing up our potential prospects, booking meetings for me. I get the
How
feed.
meta.
Yeah.
Put those people to work to generate pipeline for the business. Yeah, that's good.
I then sit the meetings and get to not only have meetings with potential prospects, but obviously ask, what made you want to take the call? How did you, and I can find out that real life feedback outside of just reading transcripts and listening to call recordings. Like, how did it actually feel to be on the call with that rep?
Sorry, I want to reinforce, I think it's brilliant to have team members teach what they're great at because many of them might be better than you. You don't have the bandwidth to do the same thing. And if you just start going through the motions of training because you're onboarding, like it's just going to be like diminishing return for the people listening. And it's like they're teaching something. So it's reinforcing to themselves what they're doing, which makes it powerful. I just think that's brilliant. I think the companies that do that, I think do very well to be able to take the best people at different things, especially as a team starts to grow. And again, I think to your point, it reinforces the culture of we're in this together, we're learning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Maybe another question to kind of only cold calling.
in terms of how we book appointments,
Yeah.
not only cold calling, that's what we're known for.
Okay.
I'd say 90% of what we do is cold calling.
Okay. So in your cadences, it's just heavy loaded on the cold calling.
Heavy load on the cold calling, and even if, let's say, even if we did have an email cadence going or something like that, if someone responded to an email and said, yeah, I'm interested in taking a look, I would never book a meeting based on that.
Okay.
We'd always have a call and go through the qualification, and if they don't tick all the boxes, it's disqualified. So we're not a volume agency. We're not known for that. We're known for
Quality.
very high attendance rates and very high quality. Usually C-suite is what we get brought in to do.
And does it matter whether it's enterprise, mid-market? I mean, I'm guessing SMB isn't really a C-suite sale, but like, does it skew towards enterprise?
No, there's a range. It usually, the easiest way to talk about it is it's if they solve a problem that I can get someone emotional about on a call, we'll do it. If it's something that no one really cares about, you're not going to get someone that emotional about. Forex trading or loans, or there'll be something that's just selling photocopiers or something, like it's not going to work.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So how do you select a client and how do you distill down that which you just articulated, whether it gets people excited about it, to train the team to be able to book those meetings?
Okay. So I'll start with the client. So from a client perspective, the first thing is there's something called the happiness equation, which is expectations Expectations meets reality equals
Yeah.
happiness.
Okay.
Now, salespeople and probably founders as well tend to sell it perfect. We all know, like, this is going to be amazing. If we work together, this is going to be great. It's going to be... So you sell. So expectation is, this is going to be perfect. If it's good, it's disappointing.
Yeah.
Right? So expectation meets reality is a really key thing. So I really want to explore that expectation when I'm working with a client. If their expectation is, you're going to make me $1 million tomorrow, it's not going to work. Because it's not going to happen.
Right. So you first assess whether they're going to be a happy client.
First assess whether they're going to be a happy client. So that's a key thing. And it's
And
another
reasonable
call.
expectations around kind of volume of meetings. Is that a good kind of rubric to look at?
Yeah, and then their own sales cycle. The interesting thing that I've learned from experience is comparing their sales cycle with ours might be different because they might never have done anything from cold before. So what we might be comparing is, we've got this referral black book of people who already know us. And we close 1 in 4 of those. I'm like, oh, great. And
or inbound is usually a different conversion rate than outbound, right? It's just not going to be exact. Exactly. Yeah, it's usually, so
it's managing that expectation. Sometimes people don't realize that. So it's managing that expectation. Then it's expectation around...
Sorry, and I mean, as an aside, how many people do you talk to that you don't think have reasonable expectations? Is it usually because they have
So the way the easiest way to say it, the way I load the calls. So let's say we got on a discovery call now. Is I give you every reason not to work with me first. So I'd go, Seth, just before we jump in, I just want to be really respectful of your time. I'm just going to give you 3 reasons. Typically, these calls don't go anywhere. Okay. And I just give the reasons up front why they don't go anywhere in really black and white ways.
Yeah.
And then you have to start by, no, that's not me. No, I can afford it. No, my expectation, all that sort of stuff. And then we get into the rest of the call. If something doesn't feel right in that bit there, they're like, actually, yeah, that's not how I thought it would work. And they get themselves out of the process from there.
So super diligent with qualification up front, which is a mark of the best salespeople, right? They're the ones who say, hey, based on this conversation, it sounds like this isn't something you're going to buy. Like I could be wrong. You can say, no, I'm going to buy this. But if you're not, like, let's re-engage later when this is a priority or never, right? Exactly. Those are the reps that are like, wow, they make it look easy. It's like, well, they're not chasing bad leads.
Exactly that. And even my Calendly form to book into my diary, you've got to tick certain boxes to get into the diary in the first place. That's very much trying to push you away.
Okay.
So by the time someone sits down and gets past that bit, it's usually like, okay, this is going to go somewhere. But there's many, many bits before them where you can kind of get off the off ramp and say, this isn't for us right now. And I've started to have people who say, I spoke to you 2 years ago. We're ready to go now.
Right. They come back to you and they're like, yeah, you weren't trying to give me that end of month discount when I definitely wasn't going to buy your cheese ball, right? It's good business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Builds trust.
And then, so the next bit after the expectations is, do they solve a problem people care about? And what is the motivation to fix that problem? If I can get both of those things, they can articulate it, I can understand it, and articulate that to my team, it'll work.
Is it often that somebody has a successful business but can't articulate that with you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. But there's a series of questions you can ask that get them there. Yeah, because imagine, Seth, you'll have experienced this. If you're talking to someone who's a founder and I say, what problem do you solve? How do they normally answer that question?
Well, they're going to focus probably on their solution.
Exactly. So they say, well, we're an award-winning CRM, and you're like, whoa, that's not the problem you solve. That's what you do. So then the series of questions that we go down are, what problem do you solve? And they explain to me something around kind of features and solution, and I go, okay. And if I was experiencing that every day, what would it feel like? And that's when I get to the good stuff. They're like, oh, well, everything would be really disorganized. You'd be banging your head against the wall. You wouldn't know where your next deal was coming from. And you're like, bingo. Right. Now we're on to something. And once I can get them to that bit, that is then the value prop of what we offer. So when I'm picking up the phone, that then becomes the pitch.
So if you can't get that out of them,
it won't work.
Your sales team, whoever isn't going to be able to schedule meetings. But I guess maybe I'm going down a rabbit hole, but who has a successful business that are you saying if they can't articulate it, you're out? What if they can't articulate it very well, but they have a successful business, which means there's demand for their product, so they have product market fit?
Well, it depends on what the business model is, because you can have a successful product. So I could sell industrial hoses to manufacturers, and that is I need an industrial hose in Google, and you're the top one at the search, so I go with you. That isn't something that I'm ever going to get an email for or a cold call about unless it's opportunistic and I have a project where a hose is
Okay, so
failing.
you're saying you got to tease out that value that elicits an emotion, even if the founder doesn't articulate it, or even articulates it really well. You got to believe it's there.
I've got to believe it's there.
Yeah,
Exactly.
okay, got it. Yeah.
Which is usually on that second point. It's usually, okay, and if someone needed that, if someone was struggling with those things, how would they notice it every day? Typically, even founders who don't understand problem-based selling, when they get to that question, they're like, oh, well, they'd find things really disorganized, it'd be really stressful. And I'm like, right,
Yeah.
okay, now there's something in this. But if
Got
we get
it.
to that bit and they're saying things like, well, it's not really a problem and it's more of a nice to have, and I'm like, this isn't going to work for you then. And that's when I probably politely decline.
I love it. And I think this is such a great exercise for all founders in the sense of, well, thinking about their own business, but also thinking about their prospects, right? Are you qualifying them really well? Or are you going to talk to everybody? And you can talk to everybody and then qualify them really fast. Just, you can have a huge top of funnel as long as you just don't spend, right? And I'm sure you're kind of, it sounds like you're tightening it with your Calendly links, but maybe at the beginning you talk to everybody, but you still have a very strict funnel that qualifies out the people, so you're not taking them down a sales, because ultimately they're going to be your customer. And if you don't want them to be you don't want to fail them as a customer, which is the same thing for every business if they're just going to churn anyway. I think people get caught up in that, just want to sign business. And again, we all do it, but it's like, are they going to be a good long-term partner? Right?
Yeah.
Is this going to be set up for success?
Exactly. And I'd probably say this might change as we grow. We're like 20 people, about £1 million turnover, but we're got this far by not really working with people we don't like either. So if I get a funny feeling and we're on a call and I think, I don't know if I even like you, I just tend to say, I don't think we're going to be the right company for you. And I don't really explain it too much, but if someone's
feels like a bootstrap founder.
Yeah.
It's not a growth at all costs, right? It's kind of
that's it. It's not. I just think, is this going to be worth it?
Yeah, do I want to talk to this person and deal?
And my team, and we've got a lot of female leadership in the business, and if there's someone that I just think I'm not comfortable putting you in front of, you're sleazy and horrible. I just think, nah, I'm cool. I don't need your money.
I like that. I like it. And then, so let's say they make it through this process. Your thumbs up, their thumbs up. Everything's aligned. You then hand them over. You don't have to get into the details of kind of onboarding and all that, but how do you distill down what your reps are going to be saying to book those meetings, to qualify? I'm guessing there's quite a wide spectrum between wow, this company really has it nailed. Here it is. We don't have to do a lot of work to man, that first call, I thought things that aren't actually what I really thought the way they did it. We got to really engineer this.
Yeah. So we teach on the methodology remains the same. Okay. So the methodology remains the same. The things that can change are, if I'm ball buster CEO, my tact is probably going to feel quite different. What I'm doing is going to be the same, but I'm probably going to get straight to the point. That the opener is going to be different. The key thing is those 2 or 3 big picture problems are what we lead in. So I don't lead on any technicality of what you do, any kind of, you're an award-winning this, can I send you creds, can we get an introductory call in? I'd just say, so if I was ringing you, Seth, what they'd be saying is, Seth, I'll be completely honest, we don't know each other. Do you want to give me 30 seconds? I'll hang up now. That might be the opener. Yeah. And then I'd say, well, I'm typically invited in by founders who are experiencing these problems, but you might tell me you don't experience any of those. So I give plenty of room for them to say no. Yeah. They then say, well, no, I experienced some of those. And then for it to be a good lead for a good meeting for me, if they're booking it for me or for one of our clients, the boxes they have to tick are, do you have a real problem that we solve? Can you give me a clear example? So is there clear heuristic bias in the business of that's how that problem physically looks for me every day?
It's not just a theory that,
it's not just a theory. It really, really exists in the business. There's a story there, a tangible story. The impact, both the business impact and the personal impact. So the business impact could be something that has no real feeling attached to it. Things feel slow and clunky. But then, okay, what's the personal impact of that problem? Well, I work too much on the weekend. I don't get to spend time with my kids. That's good. Root cause, legacy supplier letting us down, whatever it may be, there'll be a root cause there. And then a realistic picture of the future that you're working towards. So I mentioned before around, do you want the problem solved tomorrow? Probably unrealistic. Do you want it solved in 6 months? Probably more realistic. And that takes us typically, and this is sometimes where people get shocked about this, 10 to 20 minutes on a cold call. to really go into that level of qualification with someone. And only then, when they tick all those boxes, does it become a meeting for someone. So there's
and they're more likely to show up because they've just invested this time already to educate. And do you summarize that in a follow-up email confirming the meeting and all that, and share that with, or does it just go back to the AE
to the
at
client.
the company who gets it?
Yeah. Goes to the client in the end of day notes. And what we found is less is more with the follow-up. The thing that often makes people show up is the curiosity. I almost don't want to know too much beforehand, but I get everything arranged in the diary there and then, so it's confirmed for all of us.
Yeah.
And I ring back on the day of the appointment and I say, Seth, we've got some time today to talk about this problem. I just want to make sure nothing else has come up in the meantime. So I'm not saying, oh, you're going to be there like a lot of AEs do. I'm like, we're talking about this problem today. I've prepared for it. Is there anything else that's come up that you want to talk about? No, that's what I want to talk about. Cool. See you there at 10.
Right. Is there anything else you want to discuss on that call?
Exactly.
Okay.
Not, are you going to be there, which feels very different.
I think that's a really good lesson for companies that are, we could just clip this. It's like how to increase your show up rate. Well, diligent qualification reinforces that this is something that's serious, but then also the check-in, I guess. I mean, we don't like to do lots of check-ins in sales, but the check-in to say, we're confirming or asking if there's anything else, reminding them of the meeting, but in the medium of, hey, not are you going to show up, but hey, looking forward to our call today. We're going to talk about this. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Exactly. So that's the framework that the reps would go through. The bit that we've got to teach them up for a new client is, who is the ICP? Get me in the head of the ICP, so personality types and things like that. And then what are the problems and what's the motivation to fix it? And then that's the framework that I'm going to follow for it to be a good meeting.
I love it. And then what's your tech stack?
There's a few different things that we use. So in terms of data, we use Cognism, ZoomInfo.
Okay. And what is your tech stack, and would you recommend that product to other founders?
But there's a key thing to mention with this, right? Again, this is expectations with everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is a silver bullet option for data. I don't know. I know there's ones that are definitely flawed. What I've found works really well is Cognism in Europe, including the UK, and ZoomInfo in the States and Canada. Okay. That's what I found works really well. We use air call through sales. And again,
recognizing that 90% of your touches in a cadence is cold calling. So we're emphasizing on the numbers with this conversation.
Emphasizing on the numbers.
Yeah, okay.
And then the next thing is we use Salesforce via a dialer. And the dialer, we've got a couple of different dialers that we use, but Salesforce then builds custom dashboards for all the client campaigns with whatever they want to see.
Okay, because you need to do this for each of your clients, so you need a more sophisticated CRM than most early stage startups. That makes sense. Okay.
Exactly. And we pay commission to our reps based on attendance, not booking, which I think is a key thing for probably people to take away. So that's also something that you want to track for a campaign.
Yes, I like starting with meetings booked and then tracking attendance and seeing if we can just pay on meetings booked. But if the rate drops too low, then you do attendance. The reconciling is a little bit more challenging, but I get what you're saying, and I can be convinced.
So it's
either way.
We've done a lot of research on industry averages. So if they're in a really hard space, that will be reflected that it will be worth more to get a harder meeting. But really your percentage rate is the average on your percentage rate for attendance that you need to stay above to hit commission threshold. What we used to target on when I started, it was rough and ready business, is meetings booked, and people will find shortcuts to do that.
Right. I guess if you're cheating it to, yeah, for sure. I like that.
But, we've got a good team and that doesn't happen, but it gets people in the mindset of quality rather than quantity. So if you're ringing someone, it's like, I could kind of shoehorn this in as a meeting, or I could do it as a callback next week and get everything I need to get. I'll do it as a callback and not miss anything.
I love it. All right. Any other tools that you would recommend to founders that you use that are in your stack?
Yeah, so we use Aircall in the UK.
Yep.
Through Salesforce, but then we use Nux in the US. So connection rates are a little bit lower in the US. So what we found to make up for the difference and make up for the time zone difference, because we don't have anyone in the States at the moment, is we use Nux, and it is like a power dialer on steroids. It'll ring 10 people at once, put you through to the first person who picks up. Using that with good data that's been cleaned up and looked after by our data team tends to be a good recipe for success. I've tried out Clay a little bit. I think that's good. But you kind of need a PhD to be able to use it, I think.
Or an expensive agency.
But I've used that and had some good success with campaigns where it's really tight and specific what they're after, and it just doesn't exist on a data tool. That's worked well. And then the other thing that I would say for people to try that isn't part of a tech stack, this is getting a bit analog, is we found good success with direct mail.
Okay.
So physically sending stuff out in the post. I've sent out fake legs, $100 bills with people's LinkedIn pictures on them, little hammers with pieces of door, stuff that goes before we do the calling can go really well. We found that the success rate with sending that out is 1 in 2 things that you've sent out, book a meeting. So
That's
really,
wild.
really
Yeah,
high.
I've heard that too. But I think it's not a piece of mail. You got to be creative. So if
Really
you're going to do it,
creative.
you almost need someone thinking all the time on what is the creative thing that you can send. It's not just a T-shirt or
No.
and there's some companies that do it, but again, like it can be like a puzzle with their logo, so it's a little bit more intriguing. But it sounds like you're going full on kind of guerrilla creative,
Yeah.
box it up and send it out. Like they're going to open it and be like,
The best
why
one
is
we
there a
did for
hammer in
success
here?
rate, we sent out a pinata and it had a QR code in it to book a meeting. So the office would smash this pinata up. There's candy in there and then a QR code as part of it. They scan the QR code, it books a meeting. That had the best success rate of everything we've done. The handwritten stuff and just sending something out in the post is kind of okay, but you almost want a little bit of novelty attached to that. So try and think outside the box.
Yeah, and then there's the apps that do the handwritten that looks like handwritten, but it's not. And so people are just kind of like, even if you're doing it actually handwritten, it's like, how do you prove that it's handwritten so that they actually put you in the category of real versus a gimmick? Yeah. You've been very generous with your time. I paused because I have so many more questions, but I want to make sure that this is tight and that our founders can get the most out of it. I'll ask you the question we ask all founders at the end is, what would you say is the worst sales advice you've ever received?
Sales is all about relationships.
Okay.
I think that is because then it implies that it sets a funny precedent where you end up trying to build kind of fake rapport with people, and it can be people can feel it. And I've worked with many salespeople who are like, I'm spending all this time taking them out for coffee and dinner, and it's like, not everyone likes that. I for one, as a founder that people sell lots to, I hate it when people are trying to build do all that relationship building stuff with me. I don't think everyone likes it. And I think if you're not that type of person, you shouldn't be put off selling.
Right.
So
it should be natural to you versus some like manufactured relationship that you will I can cash in later for the sale.
Yeah. So I think people buy from people like them. So a relationship builder will buy from another relationship builder. So if you're selling to someone who works in events and goes to lots of events and things, you'll probably both buy from each other. So if you're both relationship builders, but if you're like, I'm straight to the point, I want to do my 9 to 5 and go home, and I'm selling to the CEO who doesn't have much time on his hands in a very busy industry that just wants to solve problems, great, there's a match there.
Yeah.
So it's matching people with people like them, less about, don't worry if you're not a relationship builder, there's still a place for you.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I feel like we should get you back on. I have so many more questions, but
anytime.
Thank you so much for supporting founder-led sales, and thanks for joining us today.
Pleasure. Cheers.